everybody. Welcome to Board Game Breakfast. I'm really glad to see you all here. Seeing you. But hey, it's a Monday, and it's a somewhat normal week, although we got a couple live things planned this week, which are fun. But, I mean, we're kind of getting back to normality, which is good, because next week ain't normal, and the week after that isn't normal. And then the week after, you know what? Forget it. There just is no such thing as a normal week at the Dice Tower except this week, which is cool. But anyhow, we'll start off a normal week with a normal contest. We got 2 copies of the original Machikoro. So you can see Machikoro 2 behind me, but this is the original Machikoro. This is for people in the U.S. You can win a copy of this by emailing us at contest@dicetower.com, and in the subject line put the word OG Machi, just like it shows there. So I guess OG stands for original game. That I won't be upset when that leaves our vocabulary, but it is what it is there. And you need to answer the question in the body there that says, how many mountains are shown in the Machikoro 2 box cover? Stop looking. So you need to tell me how many mountains are shown on the Machikoro 2 box cover, and you can win Machikoro 1. So there's that. Speaking of Machikoro 2, we will be playing that live tomorrow here on the channel, so there's that coming up too. All right, what else is going on? Dice Tower Retreat in Orlando is happening in just a few weeks. We have 15 tickets left for sale. Now, we had sold out, and then we were able to add a few more tickets. But if you want to come and play, you talking about all this new hotness, these new hot games that you're seeing at Essen and elsewhere, I am procuring those and putting them together for that retreat. And of course, our big library too that we have there. So 15 tickets left. If you want to be involved, you need to email Sharon@dicetower.com. And more importantly, the hotel is about to sell out on the November 10th, which is the Wednesday night. So this is 5.5. We're going to actually start gaming Tuesday night. So 5.5 days of gaming from Tuesday night, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. By the time it's done, you will be satiated with gaming. That's not true. I've met people who are never satiated, but many people will be satiated with gaming then. This is sponsored by Arcane Wonders, who's handing out copies of games. If you come, you get 2 games, Architectura and Sherlock 13. That's pretty good to get 2 games there on top of that. Also, I should mention on the 27th, which is, not too far away, 9 days, Dice Tower East tickets are going on sale at noon Eastern Standard Time. So you want to get those. It's going to be fantastic next year. Next year, normality! That's what we said last year too. But I feel like we're getting closer all the time. Essen convention just finished. And so the 3 big cons, Gen Con, Origins, and Essen, were back-to-back in a month, basically. I'm glad I didn't go to all 3. We still have PAX coming up in December, but there's a lot of stuff going on. Speaking of a lot of stuff, this is not a terrible segue. Let's go to some contributors.
Brandy and Ellen, we game together.
Can we play now? Hi guys, I am Randy.
And I am Ellen.
And today we are continuing our segment of board gaming related or gaming related content. And today we are talking about board game bags.
Yes.
Now, we're not going to really talk too much about these, but like the little tote bags, they work fantastic.
They do.
The bigger IKEA bags, which I don't even know if I'm not sure if they carry them anymore, but those were super nice.
Yeah.
Duffel bags. I mean,
we're not here to judge that situation.
Plastic bags, fine. You want to use those? I don't care what you use, but we're going to talk a little bit.
Use it, though.
We're going to talk about things that are more specific to them.
Yeah.
We're also not going to talk about really the game canopy bags or the Geek-On bags. They're like $150+.
We don't have a money tree.
I don't see the difference between that and our next one, which I will talk about. We have one of these, BoardGameTables.com bags. They're about $50. Yeah, that's right. You can get 3 of those for the same price.
Huge price difference. And we also have a game hall bag.
The game hall bag, which is our favorite.
Yes.
The thing I do like about the board game tables, they have one bag. They have like the regular kind of upright bag, but then they also have a duffel option.
That's so cool.
Those are super good for like if you're bringing like TI4, you know, those kind of longer rectangular ones.
Everybody has that game where you're like, what do I put this in?
Those don't fit in the upright ones quite as well. They kind of tip over and things like that. But our favorite, Ellen, is the game hall.
It's cute. We have the square one. It's little. You just tuck 4 or 5 games in there, go to a friend's house. It does have little zippers and pouches alongside, which I don't know that we've ever used.
Yeah, you can get little things in there, snacks or something, a deck of cards or something.
Some lipstick, whatever.
Yeah, I do like that they have a square one. They also have the taller vertical one, so we have one of each of those, plus the board game tables one. And the Game Hall one I felt was a little bit better quality overall. The Board Game Tables is not bad, and they do have some other ones I think that are a little bit better than their originals.
Okay.
But the Game Hall ones, I think it's $40 for either one. And the small one's great for just bringing those a couple games over. Bigger one, obviously, for bigger conventions and things like that.
Right.
Good padding, good handles, straps so you can put it on your back. That's my recommendation.
Yeah.
Anyway, we will see you guys on the next one.
Bye.
What is up? My name is Matthew McCack, and this is Smashing Buttons and Slamming Cards. This is a segment where I talk about a video game I love and I connect it to a board game I love. And this week I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm continuing off from last week, where I started sort of like a little bit of a conversation of, is a digital board game really just a video game? And for the most part, you all said no. Digital board games are digital board games, and video games are video games. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more of like a discussion as to like why that is, but it didn't quite happen. That's okay. I forgive you all. But I then wanted to ask them the question, because we talk about the inclusion of apps in board games. And I know that there are people out there who are totally against using apps in board games, which I understand. That makes sense. Cool. You want to keep things analog. You want to get away from your phones, whatever it might be. But I've even heard people say, like, it pretty much turns the board game into a video game. Specifically, I've heard this a lot with Chronicles of Crime, that it's pretty much just a video game at the end. And it's like, well, do these same people who think that digital board games are not video games think this of Chronicles of Crime, for example? Personally, I'm under the camp that, like, using apps in board games do not make them video games. They're still board games that implement apps. But I was wondering what your thoughts are. Like, do apps like video gamify a board game, or not so much? Anyway, that is it for this week. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like, you can check out mine and my brother's channel called Room 51. I'll catch you next time.
All right, so taking a look at games that came out 20 years ago. This is a big year, actually, for games that came out 20 years ago, because several classic, huge games came out 20 years ago, one of those being Munchkin. So Munchkin has had who knows how many. I mean, let me go to Board Game Geek real quick here, and let's take a look. If I put in Munchkin, how many different things are going to show up here for Munchkin? So there are 300... and there's 4 pages. So then the 4th page, yeah, it looks like, I'm just guesstimating here, but about 350 different entries. Now, there's not 350 different games that are Munchkin. The game that originally came out first was Munchkin. And then not too far after that, they came out with Star Munchkin, which was a year later. And then they came out with, I'm looking here at the list, they came out with Munchkin 2 and Clerical Errors, Munchkin 3, Super Munchkin, Munchkin Bites, Munchkin Foo. They're just consistent Munchkin. So if you've never played Munchkin before, I distinctly remember my first time. I know where I was. I was in a board game cafe in Korea playing Munchkin. We played it and we laughed at the jokes, and then we said, where's the game? And that is a lot of people's opinion on Munchkin. Basically, it's a funny game that makes fun of people who play Dungeons and Dragons, or makes fun of, not makes fun of the people who play Dungeons and Dragons, but makes fun of the silly things that can happen. And then kind of it does it. It's a lot of jokes in the game. The game involves you trying to level up, and so you are fighting monsters. Other people play cards to make those monsters harder, so that they stop you from leveling up, and that's pretty much the game. Recently, I want to say it was last year, I played this game with my kids because I want to see what their opinions of it were. Oh, I played a version of it with my kids. I want to see what their opinion was, trying to give an unbiased look at it. When I play games with my kids, I try not to say, oh, we're going to play this horrible game. No, I just play it straight up with them. And they didn't really care for it. They found it to be too take-that-y, too random. My kids are really opposed to randomness. I'm not sure where that comes from. But, you know, so it's an interesting thing to me. But before you get too far from me belittling it, now I want to be clear. I just looked at my rating for Munchkin. I've given it a 2 out of 10. Yet, it's a really important game for the hobby, and I know a ton of people like it. The game is obviously very popular. It is single-handedly keeping Steve Jackson games afloat. And this isn't my words. This is Steve Jackson's words. When they give their annual report at the end of the year, they show you their best-selling games because they release this information, and it's like Munchkin, 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 the thing that you wish was there, and Munchkin. And I like a lot of stuff that Steve Jackson makes, and I'm not even opposed to making Munchkin. When I say I give it a 2 out of 10, that's my personal preference towards it. It just doesn't work at all for me. I find myself going through it going, it's not a fun experience. But I know thousands of people I've met, many of them who are not diehard board gamers, and some of them who are, who love Munchkin. We used to have a guy in our game group who was the Munchkin king, would show up with a stack of Munchkin this high, would sit there, and anyone who came in, he would teach them Munchkin because he loved the game that much. And the game has had booster packs and promo cards and everything. So I'm glad that Munchkin exists from a hobby standpoint. Just because I don't like a game, and in this case, I really don't like it, doesn't mean I don't want the game to exist, because I know there's a lot of people who like this sort of thing. And I do like the humor that it has. I like the making fun of D&D. It's very similar to Order of the Stick, that does very similar things where they kind of mock many of the tropes and things in these games. And I have a soft spot for John Kovalick's artwork. He's the main artist for that. I think his art is kind of a you like it or don't style. He does Dork Tower, but this is his artwork to the point where if he ever, like when you see a Munchkin, there's a few Munchkins that don't have his artwork on them, and they really throw you off because it doesn't make any sense. Munchkin has been a strong enough brand that it's moved into other things. We've seen Munchkin Panic. We've seen Munchkin Smash Up, which, by the way, is really good. And so, again, it's 20 years old, and I applaud both Steve Jackson and the folks who made this game, and I'm glad for it. Just don't ask me to play it.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, we are Ryan and Bethany.
From Ryan and Bethany Board Game Reviews.
Today we're talking about Autumn Harvest. This is a Tea Dragon Society card game. It's autumn out right now. What better time to play Autumn Harvest? This has kind of a deck building feel to it. You're kind of building up this engine, but it doesn't really feel like you're building up this engine. It's a very relaxed game. You're playing one card, maybe 2 cards at a time if you've unlocked some abilities. Basically, what you're trying to do is you're trying to collect all these different memories through spring, summer, fall, and winter. Each memory is increasingly more valuable, and they give you some special abilities as well.
Can I just say that I really like Katie O'Neill's artwork? Like, I have yet to read the graphic novels yet. I see them come through work. I work at a library. I see they come through work all the time. I'm always drawn to them. I always look at them and hold them because there's these really nice, like, beautiful pictures. And I liked getting a small taste of that in this game because they're really cute. You see these little dragons and you see these little people going on little adventures and sitting around drinking tea. And you're like, I want to be there. It's so adorable.
This game is definitely the kind of game that you can, have coffee with a friend over and have a conversation at the same time. On your turn, you're literally just flipping over a card or purchasing a card. Yeah. There might be some triggered ripple effects as well, but really you're just doing one thing at a time, and it's just a really relaxed pace, a very chill game. We like to talk about it as like a rainy Saturday afternoon, like the perfect game to play in that regard.
I mean, there's not a lot of games that draw out to you for seasons, and I like the fact that there are some games that for me are like seasonal games, and I feel like this is perfect for the season that we are in now.
You guys, this one was a lot of fun. Really, really chill. Relaxing kind of a game.
If you want to hear more from us, you can find us on Facebook or YouTube. We're Ryan Bethany Board Game Reviews. Everybody, this is Ryan. I'm Bethany. Hoping you have a happy, healthy breakfast. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Hey there everyone, it's Jen, the Board Game Librarian, flipping some pages and pushing some cubes with my segment From the Page to the Table, where Aslan and I enlighten you about some great books and tell you about some more board games. Oh, and he's gone. Couldn't take it anymore. Today we're going to talk about part of my history, which I've talked about before, but that is my experience in Japanese history and Japanese culture. And we're going to talk about Everyday Life in Traditional Japan by Charles J. Dunn. Dunn was one of the masters and experts in his time of traditional Japanese life. And he has a whole chapter in here about samurai And at the time in the Tokugawa period, there were roughly 2 million samurai who were protecting each area, we'll say, of Japan. So on Kickstarter right now, or headed soon, is Senjutsu Battle for Japan, a 1 to 4 player game where you are rival samurai and you are fighting each other, protecting your land, and looking to take out the other samurai. A pretty interesting game where you are doing some programming and looking for initiative and doing some movement and combat. I like that there are different aspects of the cards where you are battling, defending, and then meditating too, which would have been a very large part of a samurai's daily life. There's also a tree aspect in here as well, where you when you've activated different parts of the tree, other things on your card are unlocked. So if you like super quick, only 20 minutes, kind of head-to-head combat style games, this might be a good fit for you. That is all this week. Happy breakfast.
All right. Well, first of all, I mentioned already, tomorrow we're going to be doing the live play of Machikoru 2. And then on Wednesday, we're going to be doing a live play of Lords of Ragnarok. I know a lot of people are interested in that one. So what else is coming this week? Well, we're going to be doing a Foursquare review later on in the week of Zapotec. But that's not the only board and dice game. I'll be taking a look at the new game from them called Origins. Dungeon Decorators, Night Parade, Camel Up Off Season, Disney Sidekicks, Bitoku. Well, I guess that I should have led off with Bitoku since that's going up on Wednesday, and more stuff coming. We're also, if you haven't noticed, we're reposting all of our live plays from the Autumn Spectacular as a separate video, so you can go through and watch those. We got a couple previews coming this week, but the biggest thing this week is it's the time. It's Z's time. It's Z's time. Last year, the guys made a list, top 10 things Tom is wrong about. This time it's Z. So Z's in the hot seat. Actually, he won't be there. But so we're going to do a top 10 games Z's wrong about coming this Thursday live. Come and join us for that. Also, if you're watching this, seriously consider watching the Shoot Some Marbles tomorrow. It's going to be exciting. We'll be there. It's going to be fun. I was about to say we'll be square, but they're round marbles. And lots of other things coming this week. So keep an eye out for all that stuff.
Hi, I'm Jordan. This is Weeknight Gaming, where I talk about a game that plays well on a weeknight, of course. So this one is a new one that's coming out this month, and it is a very pure tile-laying game, almost reminiscent of Carcassonne, and this is Land versus Sea. Now this is a game from Good Games Publishing, and I've played a number of their games before, and I honestly think this is the best game of theirs that I've played. And this is a tile-laying game similar to, like I said, to Carcassonne, only instead of using square tiles, you're going to be using hex tiles. One player is going to be scoring land masses that are created, and the other player is going to be scoring sea masses that are, I guess lakes or seas or whatever that are being created, and you score points based off of the size of them. And then there's some bonus points here and there, and there's some little additional scoring things that you can do throughout. But this one, it says it's 2 to 4 players, but it really feels like it is just a 2-player game with some kind of variance thrown in there. But a couple things that make this perfect for a weeknight. So one, it is a setup is super simple, just like a game like Carcassonne. You literally just take the tiles out of the box, put them on the table, you're done. What's also really cool is that the box is actually used for the scoreboard here. So you actually just leave the box out on the table and you use that for the scoreboard, which is a lot of fun. And then it is super easy to get into. You really just, you assign your land, I'm sea, your land, and then you kind of just start playing. You get a point for each tile and the size, and there's not a whole lot more to it. You can play it really simple. You can add some rifts, some wrinkles in it to make it a little bit more puzzly if you wanted to. But this one is really, I don't know, it feels really classic, and it's just coming out. The look of the game, the artwork is really, really attractive, and the whole thing just comes together in a really nice, kind of small package, but there's a lot of game here, and I really enjoy this one. This is Land vs. Sea. I'm Jordan. Thanks.
I'm going to say not quite to Jordan there. That game has a 3-player variant, which is very interesting. So it's not just a 2-player game. I will agree that 4-player is just a beautiful 2 versus 2. It's the same as a 2-player game. But anyhow, who is the audience is my thing today. And so this is more of a deep cut, and this is maybe behind the scenes thing. But I want to talk about video reviewers and just podcasters and what have you, and who is the audience for your podcast. And I think this is an important thing to know. So people often ask me, what do I do when I start a channel and stuff? And a lot of it is thinking about the audience. Now, when I started doing board games, I didn't think about my audience. I just posted for me. I posted board games. I was typing reviews at the time, so I typed a review about, I just love board games, so I want to tell other people about them. So my posts were for some other person who would walk by who was like Tom Vasel and had the likes and dislikes of Tom Vasel. And I didn't think about much more beyond that. And as time went by, I become more cognizant that there is an audience out there. And it's something I think about now. Audiences change, and audiences can be niche. When we start, a lot of people, and I definitely, I read a lot about people's opinions of the Dice Tower online, for good and for bad. And much of the feedback that we get about this is a lot of people say they find the Dice Tower, they enjoy it, but then they tend to hover towards a more niche podcast, one that maybe gets more involved in heavier games, or one that's on war games, or one that does whatever. And some people stick with us through thick and thin, and that's fine. But so is my audience new gamers? And if my audience is new gamers, that's something I need to be cognizant of. I've had people complain before that sometimes we explain, I'll say a deck building game, and then I'll pause and say a deck building game is where each player has their own deck of cards that they build. You don't need to know that if you watch channel all the time and if you play Dominion and many other games, but not everyone does. And this is something that I'm trying to be more cognizant of, and I have no problem when people call me out on it. If you say, you mentioned this, but you didn't say what it was. Like we often talk about Board Game Geek. So I usually try to put the tagline in there, the largest online repository of board game information. And knowing that my audience may or may not know that, I think is pretty important. To this end, in-jokes are fantastic, and we have lots of in-jokes here in the Dice Tower. But you have to realize that not everyone knows what in-jokes are. To the point, and that's why I have to explain to people even now what shut the door means, even though I stopped putting that on the channel like 2 years ago. But that you have to be very cautious of that. I've become very much aware of this recently because I've been listening to just various podcasts. And I listened to some podcasts and I said, I don't even know what they're talking about. And I'm talking about non-gaming podcasts, but I listened to a podcast and I'd say, what's going on there? Oh, well, they're talking to their audience, but I'm not part of their audience yet. I would like to be part of their audience, but they haven't dragged me in. And sometimes all that back and forth stuff, I have to work at it and learn to be part of it. And this is that knowing your audience could be anybody who stumbles across the channel. I think we shouldn't strive to turn anyone away. Like, I don't say the Dice Tower podcast is a podcast for men only. I mean, that would be ridiculous, right? We want it to be a podcast for everyone. My podcast isn't for adults only. Kids, turn it off. I don't want to do that either. I want my podcast to be for everyone, but it's also not going to be for everyone. My dad has listened to currently, as far as I've been doing the math on it, he's listened to 0 of my podcasts. I'm pretty sure my dad is going to die someday having listened to 0 of my podcasts. That's okay. My dad is not the audience for that. My dad will say, tell me a good game to play, and I do that, and that's the podcast. So I think knowing the audience is an important thing. People often talk, there's this scramble, especially amongst people who are new to podcasting and YouTubing. There's this scramble to get an audience. No one even really cares. Just give me an audience, give me an audience, give me an audience, come watch my stuff. But I think we need to think about who's watching. when I think about this stuff, I have to think, okay, so I want to keep it family friendly because anybody might be watching my channel. That's not for everybody, but that's what I want to do on my channel. I also might think that someone who's never played a game before might be watching this review for the first time. So I need to be cognizant of that. I often fail in that regards. I might talk about some terms that people don't know about, and I also can't explain every detail every time. I mean, like a die. By the way, a die is a 6-sided cubicle, that you throw, and I don't need to explain everything. But I think we have to be cautious that we don't rattle stuff off all the time that people who are watching or listening will say, I have no idea what they're talking about. So if you want to get into board game media, you need to be cognizant of what audience you're looking for. Some people look for a very niche audience. I would like to talk to people who like roll and writes. I'm here for people who enjoy party games. And I've seen podcasts and channels that cater towards that, and that's fantastic because they know what they're looking for. And we're here, and I'm trying to find a more generic, generalized, but family-friendly audience. So anyway, those are my thoughts for today.
Hey everyone! Today on the plastic canvas we're turning the hunter mobs from Bloodborne from this into this in just 2 minutes. Hey everyone, Matt here from the Plastic Canvas, and today on 2 Minute Mini we are painting the hunter mobs from Bloodborne. Now the obvious main thing with these guys, as you saw from that little bit of an intro, is the OSL effect that I do from the flaming torches and the lantern. Now, if you're not familiar with what OSL is, it stands for Object Source Lighting, which is essentially just painting the glow that comes off a light source onto the surrounding surfaces, and it adds so much depth and life to your minis because it really makes those light sources look as though they are glowing. And so the base coating process for these guys was very, very simple because I knew that I was going to be covering a good portion of each mini with these different reds and oranges and yellows. So I just blocked in some very basic greys and browns, just colors that would match the theme, and then got into the OSL with my airbrush. So I just started by laying down a dark red to all of the surfaces that I thought would get any amount of light, and then just gradually started to mix in more oranges and then more yellows and then a little bit of white as well at the end. And just every time I made that paint mixture a little bit brighter and a bit lighter, I just gradually reduced the amount of surface area that I was covering until I was only just painting the tops of their arms right around the flaming torches, just so it gave that impression that the areas that were right around the light source were getting far more intense light than the areas that were off more in the distance. And I was super, super happy with how these ended up coming out, especially because this is my very first go at doing a flame or fire OSL effect. But if you would like to see the full version of this video, where I go through all of these steps in greater detail, just head over to my channel, The Plastic Canvas, and I hope you enjoy your breakfast.
Am I the only person who's watching that and going, that's your first attempt at doing that sort of thing? I watched that and I still don't know how it works, but that's pretty cool. But wow, I'm very impressed. That is a talent I do not have. All right, so today I'm reviewing Hollywood Horror Nights, which happens once every year, although last year it was a very pale shadow of nothingness. Happens once a year at both Universal Studios in Florida and in California. I don't know anything about the California one. I just know about the Florida one. So if you've never been to this before, they closed the park at like 5 o'clock, and then they reopen it at around 6 o'clock. And this is Universal Studios, and most of the rides are closed down. I think they have like 5 rides that are still open. And then other than that, they open up 10 haunted houses that you go through, and then they have like 5 or 6 what they call scare zones, which are just areas in the park as you're walking through, and actors are running around. They're really, really not scary at all, this outside area, I guess. I mean, unless maybe you're afraid of clowns and there's a clown area or something. People might run up to you with like a chainsaw that has no chain on it, but they just might run up and like, woo, at you, but that's about the extent of it. You know, it's not very scary. It's also outside and there's a gazillion people around. But they're very entertaining, and I actually really like these outside scare zones a lot. The 10 different haunted houses that they have, you go through them essentially like a Congo line. You line up, you go through, there's lots of people going through the haunted house itself, and you just go through. And the production level on these is phenomenal. Like, it is just unbelievable, the details. Like, sometimes I'm going through a haunted house, I'll try to like look at some details. Like, you'll walk through a cabin and you'll see a cuckoo clock on a wall, and just it's amazing what they've done. These are Hollywood production sets that you're walking through. And then as you walk through, you might see some actors doing stuff. You'll see a lot of non-actors like wax figures and stuff, but there's a lot of actors in there, a ton, and they're also jumping out and scaring you. Now, I jump a lot in these. I scream a lot during the whole thing. I'm not going to even lie about that. But to be fair, I would yell a lot if just a normal guy jumped out, because they jumped out at me. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to yell. Now, this year was slightly easier than before, because as you're going through this, occasionally you might see a thin sheet of plexiglass because of COVID, and you'd be like, that's where a guy might jump out at you. But the thing is, they don't always jump out, and they jump out at random times. So if they jump at that person 2 spots in front of you, you're probably safe. You know? And sometimes I'm like, let's go. I also had my daughter with me, and she was so scared behind me, and that made me braver because, but I still yelled a lot. So they usually do several IP-related ones. This year, the big one, as you can see right here, was Beetlejuice. And then they did a few other ones. They did one based on a couple, The Haunting at Hill House, I think. And then they do some that have nothing to do with IPs. And those are actually usually my favorites. Like this year, there was one about the Pumpkin King or whatever it was, but you went through a giant pumpkin, essentially. As you went inside, you were then inside this pumpkin. And that one was really cool. That was easily my favorite. Although my second favorite was probably a noir one that you went through that had a kind of Cthulhu vibes to it. It wasn't Cthulhu, but it still had some Cthulhu, you know, like a detective, a hard-boiled detective trying to figure out mysteries, and the mystery is actually monsters. And I really enjoyed those. Now, I'm not actually scared by this stuff. Like I said, I jump when the people jump scare me. And the first time I went into it, I was like, oh, what's going to happen? But when you get used to the concept of it, again, you're walking through this with hundreds of other people as you just walk in a line. If I had to walk through these by myself, wouldn't happen. I'd get 5 feet in, I'd be like, we're done. Because then I would be much scarier. But with the other people around me, keep that. I don't have nightmares about this stuff. I just jump when the jump scares come, because that's going to happen. The Beetlejuice, like I said, was the big draw here. This was probably the best looking of all the houses. This one was just amazing looking. It was also probably the least scary of all of them. But then again, Beetlejuice isn't that scary. It also had one of those spinning tunnels you walk through thing, and those always get me. I don't know what it is. I have to close my eyes sometimes in those because you feel like you're going to fall off. But I liked it. There was a few. I mean, if I had to rank the houses from 10 to 1, I could easily do that. There was some that were okay. There was one about the Tooth Fairy, which, oh my word, the Tooth Fairy is a lot meaner than I thought they were. And like I said, the pumpkin one was my favorite. If you ever get a chance to do it, it is a fun time. I would never go by myself. I went with the Dice Tower guys and my daughter, and we just had a good time. We walked through, we saw those, we laughed, we spent time outside there. You can ride some of the other rides, like we rode the Mummy, and there's the roller coaster, and the Men in Black ride, and things like that. That's fun. And, all the food stands are open, and it stays open till 2, I'm assuming. I've never been there long enough to know. We were done around 12:20. I will say, though, that we got the Fast Pass, if you ever go, I know it doubles the price, but it's so worth it because you will stand in line for hours and hours and hours. With the Fast Pass, the longest we stood in line was maybe 20 minutes, and that was at the height of the park's busyness. So, yeah, it's a good thing. Not everyone. I hate horror movies. I don't watch them. I like horror stories a little bit, but I don't really like that. And yet, this is a fun experience. I can't explain it. It's just fun to go with people. And they have a really cool light show that you can watch too. So anyway, I recommend it.
Oh, hey there. Welcome to Tabletop Toolbox. You know, I just got back from the Dice Tower retreat in Miami, and now I'm getting ready to head back into reality. But I thought maybe before I did, I'd do a quick episode of It's Out Now, where I take a look at recently delivered Kickstarter games to determine if they were worth the wait. And today, I'm going to delve into, what's it called? Where did I put those boxes? Horizon Zero Dawn by Steamforged Games is a faithful recreation of Horizon Zero Dawn by Guerrilla Games, which was released for the PlayStation 4 in 2017 and has quickly become one of the system's most successful titles. Now, the plot of Horizon Zero Dawn is quite possibly one of the heaviest, most ineffable sci-fi stories ever written, but the board game only concerns itself with one particular side quest of the video game, and that is the Hunter's Lodge, located in the city of Meridian. The Hunter's Lodge is all about earning glory by taking down increasingly challenging prey, namely the giant roboticized animals found scattered across the environment. Now, the board game is surprisingly faithful to the video game. You can level up your characters, gaining new traits and abilities. You can loot resources and currency from destroyed robots. You can even visit merchants between rounds to obtain powerful new armor, ammo, and upgrades. And since the video game is a solo-only RPG, naturally the board game is semi-cooperative. And there lies probably the biggest problem with this game. See, it'll take players working together to defeat most of the enemies they encounter. However, only the player who deals the killing blow gets any of the glory and most of the loot. In addition, and for reasons I don't really understand, every enemy activates after each individual player's turn. These rules, along with a really tight play area and enemies who never give up from a fight, give players plenty of opportunities to be, as they say, cheeky. On the other hand, there is a fully cooperative mode available in the rulebook, as well as a couple extra expansions, which add more diverse enemies, more characters for players to choose from, and even some additional quest lines from the video game to play out on your table. Now, are these enough to overcome some of this game's glaring oddities? Well, you may have to decide. You can also check out my channel for some of my additional thoughts on this game. Until then, happy hunting. Oh, and cheers.
I don't know if he sold me on the board game, because I've seen the board game and I'm not like that pumped about it. But I am pumped about the new video game. I've never played the other one, but I have the PS5 and I'm anxious, but I just looked it up and it says February 22nd. So I'll put that out of my mind and worry about it then. So that's it for another Board Game Breakfast, folks. Don't forget, if you're tuning in, if you want to come to the retreat, it's coming up soon and it's going to be spectacular. I think that's pretty much it for this episode. I'll see you all back here in a few hours at noon for a live Q&A. Until then, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching Board Game Breakfast on the Dice Tower.
Thanks for watching Board Game Breakfast. Tune in each week for your daily dose of gaming goodness with Tom Vasel and all the gang. Until next time, I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching Board Game Breakfast, a Dice Tower production.